Mr. Alwaysright is the second segment of the seventh episode of the 11th season of Arthur, and being a fan of both Buster and the Brain, I rather like this episode. Buster asks the Brain to go shopping with him to help him choose a hat for his mother, and the Brain advises Buster to get a different hat to what Buster is thinking about getting. But Buster declares that he knows his own mother better than the Brain, which is a fair statement, and gets a hat that ultimately she didn't wear. And Buster becomes really annoyed by the fact that the Brain is always right, hence the title, and he does everything he can to try and prove that the Brain is not always right. And I really like the idea of this, the sentiment that people who are always right are really annoying. I, not to blow my own horn, but I was one of those people who would always put my hands up in class and always give an answer, which thankfully was usually right, and people tended to not like me, and I understand that, and it is annoying, and I know people in my life now who think they're always right about everything, and that in itself is annoying. So I completely understand Buster's motivations. But at the same time, Buster has to learn that it's not a big deal if the Brain is always right, because the Brain doesn't make a big deal about it. Yes, the Brain is knowledgeable. Yes, he knows a lot of things, but he's not big-headed. Yes, occasionally he does, you know, point out people's mistakes and tell people they're incorrect, but he's never gloating about how knowledgeable he is, which I think is an important distinction between somebody who thinks they know it all and somebody who's just generally intelligent. And you shouldn't try and suppress intelligence. It should be channeled in a healthy way, which I think the Brain does most times. And I think there's a balancing act to be learned, both for the Brain and for Buster. Regarding the hat with the moth hole, I thought that was a really clever idea. I thought it worked very well. I won't obviously explain what I mean by that in any detail. I don't want to spoil it. But if you watch the episode, when you see that hat, I think it worked quite well. Also, the Strunken White parody, loved it. Definitely would have went over my head as a child, but this is one of the things I'm really enjoying about watching Arthur as an adult. Aside from the fact it's just a brilliant show, there are, certain references and certain things that as a child would have meant nothing to me. I think the previous episode, Dancing Fools, there was a Fred and Ginger award. Love Fred Astaire now. As a child, wouldn't have had a clue. So it's actually a pretty good episode. Really enjoyed it. Definitely has some good messages in it. And the Brain and Buster are two of my favourite characters. So seeing them as the key protagonists in this episode together, really rather enjoyed it. Oh, and can we talk about the price of the ice creams at the Sugar Bowl? Um, the Buster got this gigantic ice cream, and it cost, I think, $3 something. Not realistic, even for then, in the beginning of the noughties, that seems a little cheap. But that aside, definitely a really good episode.